What if I told you that a Russian fighter jet came within inches of triggering a nuclear war between global powers just a few weeks ago? This was not a drill. This was not a military exercise. This was real. And it happened in July of the year 2025 in one of the most tense skies on the planet, the Black Sea. A B-2 bomber of the United States Air Force, designed to carry nuclear weapons, was brutally intercepted by a Russian Su-27 fighter jet, a maneuver so aggressive, so reckless, that the Pentagon considered it a direct provocation. One single mistake, and the world could have woken up to the beginning of a new war. Today, on TechZNX, we are going to reveal everything. What happened, how it unfolded, how it ended, and why this incident could change forever the rules between Russia and the United States. So get ready, because what you are about to hear will leave you unsettled. Let's begin. It all started on July the 7th of the year 2025 at 8:16 in the morning local time. High in a clear sky above the Black Sea, a strategic B-2 Spirit bomber of the United States Air Force silently pierced through the atmosphere on what seemed to be a routine mission. But that day, routine would turn into extreme tension. Since Donald Trump returned to power, U.S. military doctrine changed immediately. No longer symbolic patrols or passive surveillance flights. Now, missions were clear: send a message, show presence, display strategic muscle against an adversary growing more unpredictable. Russia had been intensifying its naval maneuvers near Ukraine and Georgia, and the United States was not going to look the other way. That is why the B-2, a stealth colossus with nuclear capability, took off from Fairford Air Base in the United Kingdom heading toward the Black Sea. Its mission: to conduct a deterrence patrol in international airspace, skirting the exclusion zone unilaterally imposed by Moscow since the annexation of Crimea. This is not just any aircraft. The B-2 Spirit, with its flying wing design, is one of the most sophisticated machines ever built. It was designed to evade radar, infiltrate enemy air defenses, and deliver nuclear strikes with surgical precision. It can carry up to 16 B-61 or B-83 bombs, fly above 50,000 feet of altitude, and remain in the air for over 40 hours if refueled mid-flight. Its unit cost surpasses $2 billion. You do not deploy it lightly. That day, at 8:21, when the B-2 crossed the 100-kilometer line of approach toward Crimea, Russian radars picked it up. Although the aircraft is stealth, the S-400 Triumph systems deployed in Sevastopol managed to catch its thermal signature in passive mode. An automatic alert was sent to Belbek Air Base in the north of the peninsula. There, two Su-27 flanker fighters were on high alert. In just 2 minutes and 53 seconds, both took off heading south. The Su-27, although born in the 1980s, remain extremely agile. Designed for air-to-air combat, they can exceed 2,500 kilometers per hour and perform maneuvers at 9G. They are not specialized in intercepting stealth bombers, but their presence is a real threat. They are fast, aggressive, and their pilots are trained to push without firing. Meanwhile, inside the B-2, the early warning system detected hostile vectors approaching. At 8:31, the pilots activated passive countermeasures, thermal flares, metallic chaff, and electronic emissions to create a false aircraft profile. Everything was by the book. But what happened next broke all limits. One of the Su-27 closed to less than 150 meters off the B-2's left wing. Then it executed an aggressive maneuver known as headbutting, crossing the nose of the target aircraft at high speed and dangerously close. This generates violent turbulence that can destabilize even a massive plane like the B-2. Cockpit cameras captured the moment clearly. The U.S. pilot briefly lost control. The aircraft suddenly dropped 200 feet. The automatic stabilization system corrected altitude within seconds, but the scare was real. At that altitude and speed, more than 220 meters per second, one mistake could have cost the crew their lives, or something far worse. The Russian fighter did not pull back. It came again, this time even closer, only 50 meters from the fuselage, close enough to see the numerals, the Russian Air Force insignia, and even the pilot's face. By protocol, the B-2 maintained course and altitude. It was flying in international airspace, with its transponder active and all identification signals in order. But from the Russian tower in Crimea, radio transmissions in Russian demanded its immediate withdrawal. Not a legitimate order, but a warning. On the ground, the Pentagon followed everything in real time. A Lacrosse 5 spy satellite in low orbit transmitted infrared and radar images live to the United States European Command, based in Stuttgart, Germany. There, analysts tracked the thermal and vector trajectories of the aircraft involved. In parallel, NORAD was alerted. The world's clock began to tick faster. At 8:37, the B-2's electronic warfare system detected an anomaly. Several frequency bands had been jammed by high-intensity emissions. The Su-27 carried electronic suppression pods. Russia was blinding the U.S. bomber in real time, not with weapons, but with technology, with electronic warfare. This was no accident. It was a calibrated provocation designed to push the limit without crossing it completely. The goal was clear: to show they could interfere, harass, disrupt, and at the same time measure the U.S. response. The B-2 tried to establish contact with the Incirlik Tower in Turkey, but the interference persisted. The Link 16 system, which connects NATO units in real time, worked with delays. For several seconds, the bomber was literally isolated, blind, deaf. At the White House, Donald Trump, in a meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was briefed on the incident. He ordered an immediate but calibrated response. No shots fired, but a strong reaction. From Incirlik Air Base, 2 F-35 Lightning II fighters of the 495th Fighter Squadron scrambled at supersonic speed toward the B-2, with orders to establish an escort corridor until the situation de-escalated. Meanwhile, the Su-27 continued harassing. At 8:41, one placed itself directly above the B-2, only 30 meters away. An extremely dangerous move. The downward jet wash of the fighter could have caused the bomber to lose lift. Any turbulence, any micro error, and both could have collided mid-air. The U.S. nuclear protocol dictates that any strategic aircraft must avoid collisions at all costs, even if that means descending, turning, or retreating. But the B-2 did not budge. It held its course, because yielding meant validating Russian intimidation, and in geopolitics, that is a price too high. Finally, at 8:54, the F-35 appeared on radar. Their thermal signature was clear, direct, unmistakable. The Russian fighters, detecting their arrival, abruptly turned north and returned to Belbek. No shots fired, no missiles launched. But the diplomatic clash was now inevitable. That same afternoon, the White House issued an official statement describing the incident as an irresponsible provocation that put regional stability at direct risk. Russia, for its part, denied everything, claimed there was no visual contact, no aggressive maneuvers. But radar logs, infrared images, and flight data told a different story. The next day, NATO convened an emergency North Atlantic Council meeting. Although the alert level was not raised to DEFCON 3, patrol rules over the Black Sea were changed. From that moment on, all strategic flights would be escorted from the beginning by Allied fighters. And here comes the most unsettling detail. Several leaked reports revealed that during the incident, the B-2's automatic launch systems performed an internal security check, meaning that, in the event of direct impact, protocol would have transferred arsenal control within seconds to onboard officers for a possible nuclear response. It never reached that stage, but the fact that the system activated proves how close the world came to catastrophe. Military experts immediately recalled a historic precedent, the Barents Sea incident in 1983. When a Soviet radar mistakenly detected a U.S. nuclear strike. That time, Officer Stanislav Petrov prevented disaster by deciding it must be a false alarm. The difference is that this time, it was not just electronic signals, it was real aircraft within meters of colliding. The tension was far more tangible. Another overlooked fact: during those critical minutes, several NATO warships in the Black Sea activated their Aegis radars in continuous tracking mode. This meant that if the Su-27 had fired even a single missile, Allied frigates could have responded instantly with anti-air systems. The risk of escalation was not only in the skies but also at sea. Air and sea were connected in a network of latent fire. Politically, the impact was immediate. The European Union demanded explanations from Moscow and called for a reduction of hostile flights in the area. The Kremlin, however, reacted the opposite way. Russian state television celebrated the incident as a symbolic victory, showing footage of Su-27 takeoffs as if they had expelled an intruder. Propaganda turned the risk of nuclear war into a televised show for domestic consumption. The most shocking part? The entire incident lasted less than 20 minutes. But in that span, the world stood at the edge of the abyss. One mistake, one collision, one misinterpreted missile, and history would have been rewritten. In the year 2025, with war still raging in Ukraine, with the Black Sea turned into a strategic chessboard, and with nuclear bombers in play, the line between deterrence and disaster has never been thinner. And now we ask you, do you think these kinds of provocations could end in a real war? Or are we doomed to live in permanent tension between giants armed to the teeth? Leave us your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to TechZNX, hit the bell, and share this video to explore more about military conflicts like this one. We'll see you in the next video.